For more on this, we cross now to our correspondent in Washington, Nick Harper. Nick, thank you for being with us. How have Biden's remarks been received?
Well, it's interesting that once again here we have yet another American president having to travel to another American city to play that role of consoler-in-chief, to meet with victims' families, people who were gunned down, as he said, going about their weekly shop. Once again, he has to do this in another American city. But the problem this time round seems to be that many of the people in Buffalo are expressing frustration and anger. Some of them saying that essentially the president's words are ringing hollow, that he's bringing plenty of condemnation, consolation, even compassion with this speech, but he isn't putting any tools in place to try and combat the things that he spoke about. The hate crime, the white supremacy, the gun crime itself. He announced no new policies that would allow these assault-style weapons to be taken off the streets. He admitted that he can't do it himself and that he needs to work with Congress to do so, but he also admitted that it would be very difficult to pass any new laws that would put stricter gun control measures in place. And therefore, that's why we're seeing frustration from many of the residents there who are saying, look, the gun control measures will not come as a result of this tragedy. And yet, once again, we're seeing racism and white supremacy in the US. The president obviously speaking out very forcefully about it here. But black residents in the city of Buffalo have been saying that it's all very well for the president to come to their city, but they also want to see meaningful action coming in tandem with it.
Yeah, it's incredible. This person was able to collect an arsenal and hide it in his parents' bedroom. Apparently there was hate spewed online. So is there any concern that the authorities missed something here?
Well, that is really what authorities will be looking at. The fact that it seems the gunman was planning this for months, that he was posting about it online for months, and yet it wasn't spotted or detected by any of the people who would normally be policing social media. There are questions being raised as to why, when he was posting about it back in December, why, when he visited the supermarket as many as 3 times in March and wrote about it online, why he wasn't identified well ahead of the shooting on Saturday. That's part of what's coming out of this. Calls for stricter gun control measures, but also stricter policing of social media to be able to raise red flags earlier for people who could pose a threat to other people. Now, it's interesting to note that New York State has something called a red flag law in place. It is where authorities believe that a person could pose a threat either to themselves or to other people. If that's the case, then a red flag is essentially raised against their name on their file, and it stops them from being able to buy firearms. Now, this gunman was arrested last June after he made threats at his high school. He had a mental health evaluation for a day and a half, but at the end of that, a red flag was not placed on his file, and therefore, when he went to buy a firearm, there was no reason why the person selling it should think that he should not sell this gun to this person. He was able to buy it lawfully. So very much authorities looking at really how they missed these opportunities, but also how going forward there may be ways to better police social media and a chance to relook at those red flag laws.
Yeah. Next, so we're hearing he has pleaded not guilty, but many people saw this hate crime. Any expectation of how this will play out in court? Is he expected to then give some form of, I don't know how, but some sort of justification of what he did?
Well, it's not clear. I mean, he's put forward plenty of justifications in his social media writings, in that 180-page manifesto that he allegedly penned his justification is that he subscribes to what has been up until now a conspiracy theory, a fringe theory called the Great Replacement Theory. This idea that white supremacists feel that they are having their country taken over by people of colour and therefore fighting back against it. He spoke about in his writings this idea of replacers, people who were stealing the country from him, and therefore he felt a reason that he was justified to target them. It's not exactly clear how his defence will try and put that forward in court as a justification. But what we do know is his defence had requested a psych evaluation, a mental health evaluation. They initially requested that in court when he made his first appearance, his arraignment. They have since withdrawn that request. That essentially signals that they would therefore not be attempting to plead some sort of mental health disorder that led to the events that took place on Saturday. But it is unclear at this stage exactly what their line of argument will be when this eventually comes to trial.
Finally, very quickly, you said there's cold comfort for the people of Buffalo. What is happening in terms of these hateful ideologies, as the president called them? A rise in white supremacy, seemingly, is that being tracked? Is that true? What are the reasons behind it?
Well, it's something that the FBI has moved right to the top of their priority list. They say domestic terrorism in this sort of form is something that they are looking at very closely. Yes, there is that fear that potentially there has been some sort of rise. As the president spoke about in his speech, in the last couple of years, there have been mass shootings, mass killings, where the gunman has identified people of colour or of other ethnicities or other religions that they want to target for that particular reason. More than 20 people killed in El Paso by a gunman at a Walmart store. He was targeting Hispanic community. In Pittsburgh, more than 10 people killed at a synagogue, Jewish worshippers being targeted there. And this is a community where people of colour, black Americans, have been deliberately targeted. It is something the president wants to try and get to grips with. And he also said that anyone who is putting forward those ideas, even if they do so in a veiled way, are not only complicit, but they should be called out and stopped from doing so. The fear is that some conservative media outlets have been putting forward these theories, pumping them into millions of Americans' living rooms around the United States, and the president saying quite simply that needs to stop. Of course, getting a handle on that and actually achieving that is a different matter. The president admitting that these things will be difficult, but really putting the onus on all Americans to try and play their part in getting rid of what he called a poison that was destroying America.
All right, live from Washington in the US, Nick Harper, thank you very much.